Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you might be joining from. I am HR Funk, and this is my firing line for Wednesday, December 3rd of 2025. This is the online show that is completely driven by you, your questions, and your comments. Otherwise, I would be practicing my rendition of Bing Crosby's White Christmas, and all the dogs in the neighborhood would be howling. um, Real quick before we get started here. Oh, if anyone's wondering why I'm wearing a cover during this particular show, the reason is because I was out working in my yard earlier today doing some things with a different cover on, and my hair looks absolutely ridiculous. So rather than scaring anyone during the course of this broadcast, I thought what I would do is unveil my brand new 250th anniversary Marine Corps cover that you can see right here. This is the first time it's made an appearance online, and you'll be seeing this more and more coming up in future videos. Also, for anyone that doesn't know, I was nominated for a Gundy Award this year. The Gundys are sort of like the Academy Awards for the firearms content creator crowd. And I feel very flattered that someone thought enough of my work that they nominated me for one of these awards. I'm nominated under Best Gun Reviewer, which is sort of like the Best Actor Academy Award. It's really amazing that I'm in that category. But the way this works is there is a vote that is taken. It started on December 1st. It goes through December 15th. If anyone wants to vote for me as the best gun reviewer of 2025, go to thegundys.com. And you can see that going along the bottom of the screen right there. And it'll walk you through the process. Go down to the category of best gun reviewer, and you can vote for me. There are many, many other categories, and a lot of the people you know who create content on YouTube and other platforms are represented in those categories. So if you want to vote for any of them in those categories, you can do so as well. There, I'm kind of ashamed to say there are some folks that I've never even heard of that are nominated in there that must create content on maybe TikTok or some of the other platforms out there. So anyway, go to thegundys.com, look for me under the best firearms reviewer. I'm down by the bottom of the page. I'm not sure if that means anything or not. But there are a lot of people on there that you're definitely going to recognize when you look at the different categories, and you can vote for anyone you want to in the various categories. I am feeling very, very good this evening because I have got a special guest. Dan the Wolfman is going to be joining us here in just a moment. And Dan has been a guest on the show before. And one of the things we've not done prior to today is really kind of delve into his background a little bit and introduce him to all of you. So I think this is going to be a great opportunity for everybody to get to know Dan a little bit better and kind of see what perspective he's coming from when he's presenting the information in his videos and also his reviews, which he does as well on his channel, Dan the Wolfman. So I am going to bring Dan aboard right now. He has been waiting patiently, and here he is right there with us. Dan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm all right, Howard. Thanks for having me again. I had a pretty good range day, and now get to talk to you and all the guys out there. And if anyone has any questions for me, martial arts, firearms related, whatever, cool. Maybe we can get to those at the end of the show. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, by all means, if you have questions for Dan, if you have questions for me, be sure to put those up there. And I am just going to take this ticker down right now so we don't have that thing going across the bottom of the screen. And let me get back to the comments here. And I know we have a lot of people that were in the room early. Jeff Tim, I know, was here early. We've got Chris 1911. We've got, who else is here? Craig Benz. Bill 1717 was here early on. Coleslaw Fries. By the way, thank you, Coleslaw Fries, for the donation. And also, Jeff Tim, thank you. Thank you very much. We've got somewhere in here. I saw Marv.
Yeah, I saw Marv too. You got a good group of dedicated followers, and that's something I'm lacking. That hopefully some people will give me a chance. I think they get sick of me or something, but hopefully I need to build more of a crew that will comment and interact and try and have a little bit more of a community kind of feel to my channel.
I hope so. We've got 22 people. It just went down to 21. So apparently somebody already decided they didn't want to hear from us. But
I
we've
started
got
speaking. They're
20
like, I'm out of here.
21 people in here now. And for anyone who doesn't know, as I said a moment ago, Dan has his own YouTube channel. And it started some time back with his martial arts programming that he was uploading to YouTube. And if I can go back into your background a little bit, Dan, and talk about sort of where you started out and how you got to where you are today. You're originally from the Midwest, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm from the Midwest, and yeah, I started martial arts when I was 9. Actually, I started because I went and saw the Karate Kid. I'm like, Mom, Dad, this karate shit really works. Sign me up, and they did. It was a Taekwondo school, so Korean karate. But literally, since 9 years old, was doing Taekwondo,
What
and
year was that, Dan, that you started at 9 years old?
86.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I started when I was 14, and it would have been 80, what, two or something like that. And my parent system was Taekwondo as well. So I think that's cool. We started, and I know at that time, Taekwondo was really, really exploding in the US. And I'm curious about something because when I was training, when I started out very early on, um, Taekwondo I thought was a fantastic defensive martial art. A lot of the techniques that we were working on back in those days were very definitely combat oriented. You know, a few years later, when I went to Korea, the Korean military was required to train in Taekwondo because it was considered the national martial art, and it was such a military and effective system for use. But one of the things I noticed, and I can remember in the mid 1980s when we found out that Taekwondo was going to be accepted as a demo sport in the 1988 Olympics. And I actually qualified for the Pan Am Games in 1987, I believe. I fought in the Maryland State Championships. I placed second in the Maryland State Championships, and that qualified me for the Pan Am Games, which that year were held in Indianapolis. And the Marine Corps decided to send me on a deployment. I couldn't train, couldn't fight, didn't get to fight in the uh, um, uh, Pan Am Games. But one of the things that I noticed once Taekwondo became an Olympic sport,
Mhm.
it seemed like a lot of the practical, defensive, really hardcore street fighting aspects faded away and it became exclusively a sport. And it's sort of the hard karate style or hard karate version of judo these days, as judo is to jujitsu. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that
Yeah,
based on your
my
own
my
background.
I think you were ITF and I was WTF, so the
Hmm.
Olympic style is WTF.
Hmm.
So you had like more of the like kind of real. Mine was always WTF, which is more the Olympic style
Hmm.
scoring, no face punching, that kind of thing. Um, you know, it was more. I wasn't totally at a McDojo. I mean, I was his first black belt, and I didn't get it till I was 15 or 16.
Hmm.
So I had 6 or 7 years in there. I was his very first black belt. He was directly from Korea. Um,
Can I ask his
so
name? Your
it wasn't
instructor.
totally watered down, but it wasn't like hardcore either. It was just mostly kicks. And we thought it was all going to be Van Dam kicks at the time.
Uh huh.
And I mean, I did. I literally did get in a street fight versus a tall wrestler junior year of high school, the local bad boy, and jump round kicked him in the head. And he tried to single leg me against the cage, against the lockers. But that's what people thought real fighting wasn't. It's part of it for sure. But yeah, that's how I started. It wasn't that hardcore. I got a feeling you were on the other side. That's probably the better side of it. ITF, a little more realistic kind of thing. We did a bit, but not much. Now, when I would guest teach when I was already a teen and he'd leave, go back to Korea for a week or two, I'd run the dojang and I would have people doing headbutts, elbows, knees on the bag at the end of the night, spinning back fists, things like that. So I was trying to keep it more street, trying to make it reality before anyone really knew what, reality based stuff was, what reality fighting was, or extreme fighting or ultimate fighting. Um, though I was already like reading Bruce Lee books and trying to cross train and do that whole thing.
And that was a thing for me too. I was always a fighter. I was always practical martial arts first and competitive martial arts second, although I got into a lot of competition. And I was fighting the Olympic style Taekwondo, which I was kind of disillusioned with early on. The whole no hands to the head type of thing and all of that just bugged me. And I ended up getting involved in kickboxing, what at that time was considered kickboxing, and eventually morphed into the MMA that we know today. And I really incorporated a lot of different things into my own personal fighting system. Everything from Western style boxing. I used to train with the boxing team when I was stationed at Cherry Point. That I got into some styles of wushu and just anything that I could bring in that I thought was going to be beneficial to me as a martial artist, I did. And I suspect you did much the same thing. And I know eventually you got into some other systems.
Yeah, by like 16, I'd say 17 maybe. I found like a PK world champion kickboxer and sparred a real man for the first time that gave me a hook, and I'm like, oh, this is what it's like. This is a little different. We're not play point fighting. And was going to like Choi Kwang Do schools and different this, different that, and until like the internet and the UFC took off, like it was kind of just you had to try out things and mix and blend things on your own
Mhm,
and searching for the truth. But things weren't really known that well back then, and so I was kind of already cross trading from like 16 to 20, but it really wasn't until about 20. I had TA'd a Taekwondo class at university. I had taken a judo class. I'd taken an Aikido class, took a Tai Chi class.
mhm,
Yeah, so I got a lot of credits in those. Um, but until basically I started training jujitsu and I hooked up with like my first famous UFC trainer. But I was already like me and my buddies would kind of play fighting after we saw the first UFCs and trying to mimic it. But I had a leg up on them from a couple months of like twice a week judo classes. Makes a big difference when you actually even know a little bit of grappling versus
mhm.
none. So I was sparring and whatever, but I hadn't like I got hit by some real kickboxers, but I haven't like been to a real boxing gym yet or anything, and was kind of learning as I went along. And then eventually, I actually left university to go to the other side of the state to find the one jujitsu blue belt that was under the Gracies to learn. A blue belt back then was like a god. So
Mhm.
I think I first saw UFC 3, 4, and then 95 ish. It was like a blue belt was the thing. I mean, November 94 is when, or November 93 is when UFC first started. Um, and we just started to go, oh, what are these rentals at Blockbuster Video? You know, and yeah, it kind of changed a lot.
Uh, you know, if I can wind the clock back just a little bit, those early days of UFC, I really, really enjoyed where you had the people who were dedicated stylists in the different types of martial arts, and you could see the contrast between, say, Shotokan and whatever, Goju or I can remember people, they had sumo wrestlers, they had Chinese stylists, they had all these different people. And it was so interesting to me as a martial artist to see the different techniques and the different ways that the competitors would go about the fight, and I found it educational, I found it entertaining, and eventually everything homogenized into what we know today as MMA. And while it's probably more effective I don't think it's nearly as entertaining. What are your thoughts on that?
There's it's been a bit oversaturated, but some of that mystique is gone because it was such an unknown. We thought it was, oh my god, blood sports were real, and it was style versus style, and so like those first 5 or 6 especially, but then even we didn't get the like world class wrestlers into like UFC 10-11, like Mark Coleman's and Dan Severn's and Don Fry's and that kind of thing, and Mark Kerr's. Um, and then like so then it was all wrestlers now beating jujitsu, and then
Hmm.
a guy named Maurice Smith came along and kicked Coleman in the head, and it was like, whoa, what's going on here? Oh my god! Until then, people were like, kicks above the belt don't work. That was the saying then
Hmm.
until Maurice Smith. And that's really when it was like, oh, wait a minute here. We got to learn not just the jujitsu and now the wrestling, but we got to learn the kickboxing too. And then that's when it really like started to change. MMA wasn't even coined a term yet. So my first fights were no holds barred fighting,
Hmm.
uh, including some that allowed kicks to the head on the ground or knees to the head on the ground or with wrestling shoes on in one of them. Um, things like that. So it was pretty wild back then. But yeah, the, the mystique isn't there like it was in the early days.
I agree. And it's kind of gotten to the point where it's sort of mirroring to some degree pro wrestling with all of the hype and pyrotechnics going off and all this kind of stuff that happens in the MMA fights, that is peripheral to the actual competition itself. And I don't know. I guess I miss the old days for many reasons, but
I
that's
miss the
just
old
one.
days too. I mean, that's the like loin. That's the cloth that I was cut from. So, I mean, there wasn't weight classes. I had to train. I mean, I was, I'm just shy of 5'11". I was a ripped 197-pounder in high school when I was first training with Dan Severn. So, I mean, I wasn't that, muscular. I mean, I was muscular, I was ripped, I was lean, but I wasn't like that big. And yet I knew like I might have to fight guys like Severn and Tank Ab and all these guys I trained with later, these big old, huge heavyweights. And then you got Coleman and Kerr came on the scene, and it was like, holy shit. Like, um, but my first few fights were not necessarily like really weight class. Like
Hmm.
one, I weighed like one. What was my third fight, fourth fight? I'm like 205, and the guy was 211. But that was without cutting weight. Not nowadays 205ers that are 228, and they make the cut to 205, and they're back to 224 to 230 by fight night. So like with no weight cutting. Another fight, they are like, oh, pros don't need to weigh in. I'm like, that's the exact opposite. 205, no cutting weight. I made him cut weight because he looked like I knew he just had some vitamins in his system after he just fought in Japan and a top guy. And I'm like, I at least want to see him get on the scale. So and they like 210.9. That's fine. That's what's in your contract. I'm like, okay, whatever, man. I just wanted to make him lose a little bit so hopefully he'd get tired in the second round because I kind of did a lot of research and I'm like, I got a good chance from like the 6 to 8 minute mark. He loses his first win in the beginning, like of the second round, and maybe if I can survive that long, there's a little bit until like kind of that second win or muscular endurance kicks in. So yeah, it was kind of wild fighting in that before like MMA was even a coined term. It was NHB, no holds barred fighting. And I got I came up under some of the OGs.
Now, eventually, you got into Catch Jitsu and started to produce videos on that. How did that come about?
Well, I had this is actually I renamed it now, but this is actually my second YouTube channel. So I was really early on YouTube with instructional videos in 2009. E Harmony, Expert Village. I am single, ladies. Expert Village made a bunch of short videos. This is really early days of YouTube, 2009, and I did. They only put out like 45, but I did like 60 little 2-minute instructional self defense videos, And I mean, I got like somewhere like 17, 18 million views of those 45 videos nowadays that they put out. But that was before YouTube was like oversaturated. So I was really early and had my channel. I was putting out some pretty good grappling instructionals for that time period on crazy stuff that people still nowadays don't know. Like one of my early ones was from the back standing to a rolling schoolboy leg lock from the back. Walker's brother, people know Walker's kind of exciting fighter, but his bigger heavyweight brother is more of a grappler. Maybe like 6 months ago, it was the first time it's been attempted in the UFC probably like 9, 10 times, but it's the first time someone got a win with that technique that I had out in 2009. So I was pretty early in on that. Um, I was also early mixing catch wrestling and jujitsu together, where like nowadays people just kind of say it's jiu-jitsu, but it's not really the Gracie or the Machado or the old school Brazilian jiu-jitsu that I came up in, where like it kind of nowadays is everything, like the leg locks and the takedowns and the wrestling in a submission. I was really early on that stuff, probably around 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, where like Eureka, I was like a genius back in like 2014, 2015, like putting everything really together and chaining positions and submissions together that you didn't see until much later with the really high level like Donnie here, Desquad, Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin type guys. No one else was really wrestling into the jiu-jitsu, wrestling into the submissions, and putting the leg locks in the flow of everything. Whereas like nowadays, guys have at least a basic understanding of wrestling. At least competitive guys, like top competitive guys. But back then, they really didn't. It was like jujitsu's this and no leg locks until about 2001, and then like, oh, now we can teach leg locks. That had kind of come over from sambo and catch wrestling, because like Tatarov's the first guy in the UFC, a sambo Russian guy doing rolling knee bars, like UFC 6, I think. So it's kind of been a weird evolution, but I do think I was really early on with blending the grappling and putting it together. But of course, I was also mixing the self-defense martial arts and a little Kali and a little of this and a little of that, and kind of just, blending everything together.
I know for me, during my law enforcement career, I wrestled in high school, so between that and the Aikido type techniques that I learned over the years, the arm locks, the takedowns, and things like that, I found them to be much more applicable because it's a rare day in law enforcement that you can actually punch somebody or kick somebody. That doesn't happen all that often. But there are a lot of struggles, wrestling matches, whatever, where you've got to take somebody down. You got to take them down quick. You have to extract them from a car. Or something like that, and a lot of times those leverage techniques, those compliance techniques, those holds and things like that were much more applicable for what I did routinely, as opposed to the really hard styles of strikes, whether it be a punch, an open hand strike, a kick, a knee, an elbow, or whatever. So that I just know from my own background that the wrestling, the Aikido, the things like that seem to be a little bit more helpful to me than some of the whatever the more severe techniques.
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of got known as the Aikido guy for quite a while online. I'm like, oh, okay, because I got really good, and I always did. I'm very good at two wrist locks. I bounced forever, so I got really good at this kind of wrist lock. Maybe it's called Ayadori, or maybe that's the finger lock. No, that's Ubidori. So yeah, Ayadori or a Nikio technique in Aikido, but I kind of have a more realistic way of doing it. And I'm always very good at this Kotegaeshi outward wrist twist. And that's mostly from bouncing, because I'm not hitting a guy, but he grabs my shirt, he points a finger in my face, whatever. And I put him up on one toe and I'm like, hey, time for you to go.
Right.
And right away, people realize, oh, they ain't as tough as they think they are when you know more shit than they do and they're on one foot. Now, I never like threw anyone with it. That would be really awesome on the footage in a bar situation. But I mean, I literally would take them up on one toe with that wrist lock. And it's funny, maybe 6-7 years ago, I started getting famous for that because I'm going with pro fighters in Japan and everywhere else, and I'm doing it at pro fighters, and I've done it to like really high level jujitsu black belts even before I was a black belt, as well. Sometimes for the tap, but even if I just took them down with it, or if they started sitting on their butt and like sitting guard, butterfly guard, I would pass their guard at least in the half guard against some like really well known black belts because they're. So that stuff is useful for sure in the real world setting. In fact, I teach a lot of that in my self-defense instructional. So I have a self-defense instructional on BJJ Fanatics. It's called Combatives in Street Jiu-Jitsu. And I don't even get into the grappling, like ground grappling, catch wrestling style part of it until the very end. Um, a lot of what I'm talking about is that pre-fight phase, the de-escalation phase, the how to
Mhm.
put up fence concepts, some wrist locks, how to deal with someone that grabs your shirt, like try to the pre-fight stuff, try to control the outcome in the early phases. And so it's like 4.5 hours long, and people really like it because I take them through the whole gamut. I teach basic strikes. I teach the 15 most common attacks and some defenses and reactions you can have, and a whole lot of things. And even in the grappling section at the end, I'm trying to tie up the arms. As a cop, it's the hands you got to control because the
Mhm.
hands are what kill you, because that's what pulls a knife, that's what pulls a gun, that's what you got to see. So the most important thing, and typical grappling, that's not like your focus. So I taught positions that are particularly good on the ground to control the hands, whether you're working in a hospital with 5150 crazies, or
Mhm.
you're drugged out, or you're doing armed security like I do, or you're law enforcement, uh, EMS, like, the guy starts fighting you. A lot of that stuff comes into play, the control holds and things like that. So it is important, and it's an aspect that a lot of people don't get. But I can do that better because I have the real jujitsu and the real wrestling,
Right.
catch wrestling, in
Right.
order to move. And you were probably able to do it better than most, even at like your Taekwondo school, if you're doing Hapkido techniques and stuff,
Right.
because you had an understanding of some wrestling base as like both a literal and a figurative base to then understand the movements and the sensitivity to do the kind of things, the
I
control.
actually have a second Dan in Taiho Jitsu, which is basically the Japanese
Mm.
police martial art for controlling people, bringing them into custody, and things like that. And I really enjoy training in that particular system because of all the different, Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu style techniques that are used with the arm locks, the takedowns, the throws, things like that. And like I said, it just seems to be much more applicable for what I was doing on the street, as opposed to the punches, the kicks, the elbows, the knees, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then
But
there's a Hickson black belt that has gone and spent a lot. I think he's living in Japan now. Spent a lot of time in Japan, Taiho Jiu-Jitsu, and like really focusing on that and
mhm,
going to the different like Aki Jiu-Jitsu schools and some of the high-ranking Aikido people and stuff. But trying to kind of blend that world. Maybe I kind of kicked it off a little bit, but like really going into it. So people are doing it, and that stuff is important, but it's all important. And I was fortunate to kind of come up in that era. Now everyone forgets. Maybe some of our older crowd will remember names like Dan Severn, Dan the Beast Severn, the first wrestler in the UFC. He was the first guy I trained with. I got to be Tank Abbott's sparring partner for his comeback at UFC 41 through 43. I was with Tank Abbott. Then I was with Team Punishment, Tito Ortiz when he was the main guy, Rampage Jackson, like all these guys. I ended up with a lot of, a lot of top teams, top trainers, training with Gokor Shvichian, Judo Gene LaBelle. That was my third black belt.
mhm,
So I did Taekwondo, then I got Daido Juko, which is like hardcore Kyokushin karate in Japan. When I was there, I spent about a year and a half of my life in Japan. I eventually got my highest on grappling system, which is a mixture of all grappling that works from Gokor Shvichian and Judo Gene LaBelle. And after a millennia, probably the longest it's ever taken someone to get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But that's because I was always moving around and more focused about self defense, combatives, and like MMA, and then no gi, and then like gi. Like I kind of had a different focus than kind of the modern focus.
When you were in Japan, did you ever run into anyone who trained in Ashihara? I can't say it. Ashihara style karate.
Um, I've certainly talked to some fighters that had that background. I think the Daido Juko side didn't necessarily like that side. Um, um, Wait, Ashihara. What's the Sabaki method? Is that Ashihara? There's like some big Kyokushin offshoots. That's one of them.
Ashihara is very much a grappling style. It sort of combines the grappling with the hard style, sort of Shotokan-ish style karate. When I was in Iwakuni, Japan, several of the Marines there that I used to work out with trained in Ashihara style karate. And I always found that to be very interesting. So I was just curious if you would ever run into anyone
No,
who trained in that system.
I'm confusing two different styles now. Both are kind of Kyokushin offshoots. Um, there's one that's more the K1 kickboxer style, and then there's one that became his competitions became in Colorado became the Sabaki method or Sabaki challenge, um, which some early UFC guys had done, which is creating more angles than the straight on Kyokushin guys,
Mhm.
but grabbing the gi one handed and doing pinwheel throws and stuff.
Mhm.
That's my favorite martial art book I've ever. I don't have it anymore. I sold my collection. Um, on that method and a lot of circular movements and throwing and things like that. And then there's
That is the Ashihara that I remember. Very circular, a lot of throws, and like you said, that sort of pinwheel technique that they would use. That was something that I saw those guys do.
yeah, he was a Kyokushin, he was an all Japan champion, and then he like thought that there could be like a better way. And so he really thought about getting to the angles and creating angles and off balancing and stuff.
Mhm.
And it's still like ideologically one of the best martial arts ever. I really it's a great book. I think it's called the Sabaki method,
Okay.
um, or Ashihara karate. And I used to correspond in 2000, 2001. I used to email with a founder a lot. And that's how I eventually got into Daido Juko, emailing with that founder as well, because people said, hey, you have the ideas. I wanted like an MMA light for like regular people instead of just hardcore MMA, but like not McDojo karate. I wanted like real that you can protect yourself. And it was so like, oh, you got to talk to this guy. So I talked to Azuma Sensei, the Daido Juko founder of Japan. He was a Kyokushin All Japan tournament winner, but he started mixing in judo and boxing at first, and eventually a little Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu and
Mhm.
everything. But there, instead of the no face punching, he designed a helmet. So there's basically it's kind of like MMA karate, Daido Juko, or the Kudo World Championships, punching elbows to the head, but you got the space helmet on,
Right.
throw
Right.
and go to ground for 30 seconds. So we're still very fast paced, 3 minute, a 3 minute fight, only 30 seconds on the ground. So it's kind of like the Budo of old school karate, what it was
Mhm.
supposed to be, more with a self defense focus. It's kind of like street MMA karate,
Mhm.
if that makes sense to anybody. That's really kind of how the rules of Daido Juko are. So those are like two of the much more kind of practical, realistic offshoots from Kyokushin instead of just standing in front of each other, punching the body kind of
Right. Now, eventually, you made the transition to uh, and I always consider firearm shooting just another martial art because there are so many of the same characteristics,
thing.
focus and discipline and technique and all those things that we see in the unarmed traditional martial arts that apply absolutely to shooting and firearms. Um, Tell me a little bit about how you got started in the whole firearms aspect and how that became part of your content that you're presenting on YouTube.
Okay, before I go there, martial means deadly martial arts. So like people forget, and like martial arts came from everyone that had all kinds of weapons, swords and pole axes and katanas and wakasashis and everything else. So it's funny that a lot of the martial art people are like, oh no, those firearms are bad. Like, what's the name? Maybe you should like think about that a little bit. Not that you want to even in a bear fight, be able to kill someone, but like if someone comes at you with a knife, you got to do what you got to do. So whether you're armed or not, martial arts is martial arts. So I got into shooting. I don't know how young I was, but my grandfather basically teaching me. I remember being on the farm. He'd say, "Hey, go walk out there, go look at that," and he'd shoot me in the butt with a BB gun. So he taught me how to shoot, and he would cook up pheasants and stuff, ducks that he had shot. He was great shot, especially with a shotgun. He used to even I mean, really, right before he passed, he could still throw up 2 clay pigeons and get them both with his double barrel.
Mhm.
Um, and so he had good eyes, and I think I do too for seeing stuff in the sky and whatnot. But so I learned how to shoot rifle, shotgun with him. Eventually, pistols. He never had any revolvers. He had quite a cool uh, pistol collection. I remember, I think like a 1903 or 1908 Colt. Um, he had, I don't know, was it a Luger or P38? I think it was maybe a like copy of a Luger. I don't think it was
Okay.
an original one, but a copy of one. He had some pretty. I think maybe he had a 25 baby Browning. Like he had some pretty cool stuff, which is weird. I guess he was ahead of his time. He was always into pistols. He had been in the army. Um, and he always just told everyone he was a cook, and apparently he was just a cook. But then I've also found a patch that had a lightning bolt. If anyone knows, I think during the Manhattan Project, or maybe he was doing plumbing out there. I think during the Manhattan Project, he had actually been stationed out there.
Uh-huh.
And I confirmed that with my grandmother after he passed. So I don't think he talked about it. And maybe he was doing plumbing, because plumbing is pretty important when you're dealing with nuclear fission, fusion, whatever. I don't know. Maybe he was a cook. I don't know, but I know he's got some really cool patch that I haven't been able to pin down. And
Mhm.
I guess he was out there during the time, and he was a heck of a shot. So I learned from my grandfather, and that set a really good base. And as a teenager, I used to go to a range all the time where you could rent pistols as long as your parents signed off that you were able to. And so I went there like pretty regularly. And at 15, I convinced an inner city cop, needed some executive protection and stuff too, pretty respected guy, um, to let me into his class, with my parents' permission. So I was the youngest he ever let into his class that I'm aware of, before he eventually passed from a heart attack, I think. Um, so, I had some decent training early on. And then I kind of left the firearm world and just focused on my MMA, and I moved all the time and everything. So eventually I even like sold my last couple pistols to a cousin, and um, I was moving around to go join Militiches in Iowa and go here and go there and everywhere that I trained, California and Black House eventually and all that stuff. So I was kind of moving around, and I just, moving to states that weren't gun friendly, and I just kind of was not into it at all.
Mhm.
And then when I was in uh, Oregon, I decided to get back into pistols, and became a security guard and was going to do armed security. And then eventually that's what I do now. Plus, I was doing stunt work and movie stuff, with guns and things like that. So I kind of just got into it more and more. And as I aged, my body's been beat up so badly from MMA. Plus, I have lupus. I got diagnosed. Finally, I was really sick in 2009, but I had been invited to the third Daido Jukokudo World Champions in Japan. And I went, even though I was like dog sick and going to ERs and no one could figure out what was wrong with me. And I didn't eventually figure out till like 2010, but I have lupus plus all the MMA at a very heavy level, in the no holds barred days when we sparred like crazy. And I
Mhm.
mean, warehouses with rusty nails sticking out of the walls, getting slammed in, and crazy stuff back then is how it was. So my body's pretty beat up, and I still made martial art content until about a year ago. But I've been doing more and more and more firearms, and also taking it more and more seriously,
Mhm.
um, since probably 2019, 2020. And then, 2020 hits and the world goes crazy. And so, like, even more seriously then, and eventually now I'm in Tennessee. I got into armed security the last 4 years, and through all of that, I've gotten some pretty decent training.
Okay.
So
And I know you do a lot of handgun content. You've done going back quite a ways, looking at various semi-autos. I know more recently you've been looking at some revolvers and things like that. You've got quite a wide body of work out there.
yeah, I basically pistol reviews, revolver reviews, but I have my own. I focus on a lot of drills. I got drill of the month
Mhm.
videos coming out each month now for like next 9, 10 months. I'm trying to take people push their level, right? Not just be a buyer. Like a lot of YouTube's just about buying the latest, greatest, and sometimes I
Mhm.
do some of that too, if it's something I'm interested in. But it should be more about protecting yourself, being a good American, protecting the people around you, protecting your family, etc. So um, I do a lot of drills. I've done some qualifications, federal qualification videos, stuff like you've done before, and try to get that content out. Yeah, I was more into pistols until like 2019, 2020. I got my first revolver. Like I'd never owned a revolver. Like I'd rented them occasionally as a teenager. I remember renting like SP 101 because Brian Bosworth and Cold Stone Cold used one. But I never wasn't that familiar with them. And I've gotten more and more and more into revolvers, but I got a lot of content. I've had to defensively display pistols from armed robbers a lot of times, especially in 2020, living outside Atlanta. Um, that puts a real like, man, you need to be trained up kind of thing when the five would be carjackers, come at you. And eventually, through an older cop friend I had who did law enforcement for 50 years, he got me in to SWAT school. Now, things were very anti blue at that time, and a lot of cops were getting murdered, is starting to happen again. So I said I would document things a bit. And basically, I was a guest member through SWAT school. And so I got that training. I've had active shooter training since then, some high level week long class trainings since then. And my skills with the pistol, I try to make them pretty good, pretty fast and accurate. And so a lot of reviews, and I'm kind of I mix it up from red dotted modern striker fired nines like this last weekend. Doesn't do that great on my channel. I wish more people would comment. To a lot of classic carry guns. And this next year, I got a lot of classic carry guns coming out. And I got a very special revolver video coming in the next this Friday and the following Friday. So yeah, I'll give you a little tidbit about that.
Do you want to give people an idea of what it is, or do you want to hold that back so that they are
I'll
not
go ahead
surprised?
and say because there's so few reviews out there, so hopefully some people will tune in. Um, the new Taurus 66 Combat. This is a 3-inch, 7-shot, 357 Magnum made for carry with the slickest double action trigger on a revolver. It came pretty damn good out of the box. Halfway through my range day, it was like butter. And it has a concealed hammer, very tuned trigger, fiber optic front, and it has everything you would want in a modern carry revolver. It's also optics ready. I don't know if I'm going to do it yet or not because I won't fit in any holsters if I mount an optic. But having that ability, there's not a lot of revolvers out there to do so. Is pretty dang cool. It can even swap out the front sight for an 856. I've heard. I got them to send me the night sight and their gold bead. So it kind of has everything for like a real modern carry Magnum, at least for wintertime. It makes a lot of sense to me. Having 7 shots, 357s, a lot more than 5 shots at 38
Hmm.
to me, and a 3-inch ballistics that actually give 357 something. Plus, most of them are too heavy. My GP 100 is probably like 36 ounces. I got a Taurus 692 multi caliber, but with wood grips, that's 34.1. This is only weighing in at 32 and a half ounces on my scale. So I know it's at least less than the others. People are quoting 36 online, 36 and a half online, but I think that's for the regular 4-inch version. So it saves some weight, and I think I'm gonna carry it sometimes this winter. And it's pretty awesome. And I made a very fun video for Friday. I spent a lot of time editing a talkie video with a whole lot of the best movie footage with revolvers and 7 shots and stuff like that into it. And I think a kind of medium/medium large frame uh, carrier revolver still can still get it done. It's more shootable. 32 ounces is a lot more shootable than 15 ounces. And
Mm-hmm.
ballistics of a 357, maybe there's something to that man stopping power. It certainly seemed to back in the day. And I did try this thing out with a lot of hollow points from running a cylinder dump at 38 plus P's to mild 357 magnums to wild to like basically the federal classic loads through it to some pretty heavy 158s, but still kind of manageable in this. That you really, you don't want to be shooting through, or you don't want to be shooting at distance rapidly and be able to shoot quickly from like a, even a J frame, even from your 640. Like up close and
Mm-hmm.
personal, that's one thing, but can you shoot quickly and accurately at distance? That's with a medium magnum you can, but with like a heavy magnum, it's pretty tough, especially as as we age. So it's really cool, and there's only a couple videos on it, so I hope people will tune in for that. And then the full ranger video, the full like range video just at the range will come the following Friday, and I'm going to do a whole bunch on revolver reload methods, size comparison videos, holster videos. I'm going to do a lot with it because there's very few out there in the wild.
That sounds very cool. And anyone who's watched my channel for any amount of time knows that I'm a wheel gun fan and have been for a long, long time, going all the way back to my youth. I never was issued a revolver during my law enforcement career. I always had one version or another of a semi-auto, but I carried them a lot of times for off-duty and backup purposes and for just general field use and things like that. I had to become a revolver instructor because we did have officers that still carried revolvers that I had to train. And I just very much enjoy a quality 357 especially, but even some of the other cartridges that are out there that get chambered into the revolvers now and then. Just the thing I always notice with revolvers, to me at least, they are I never know quite how to characterize this. I'm going to say a relaxing style of shooting because you don't have slide cycling, you don't have casings flying past your head, you don't have all that type of thing going on. You can just concentrate on the shooting experience, your trigger control, your sight picture, and all that, and enjoy shooting
It's a
those
little
slide.
more intrinsic. Yeah, I enjoy my revolver. I call them revolver training days. Like every 5 weeks, I just take revolvers to the range, and they're the most fun that I have. And having fun and keeping interested is part of all this, right? But maybe it's like the nostalgia, and maybe it's just kind of an intrinsic more feel going through a double action trigger. That's different than mashing a striker fire trigger. Like there's
Mhm.
more feedback. Maybe it's like driving a 911, you know, versus like a Tesla. Like a modern Tesla is probably fun, and I've been in them and rocket ship. Get on the highway, it's instantaneous acceleration, kind of like other things. But the feedback from an old school or even a classic Mopar, like I used to have a 70 Challenger, the feedback is different. Like it gives you more feedback, it gives you more feel, it's more of a, I don't know, something between man and machine, I guess.
I think you're right, and I think too, for anyone who masters a double action revolver trigger, they can learn to shoot basically any other type of firearm out there, whether it's a double action, single action, or double action only, or any of the various striker fire triggers or anything else. If you master that double action revolver trigger, everything else is going to seem easy after that.
Yeah, I think you can see that if you go back and watch my videos 2020 21, I have had some high level training, but most of it is me going to the range every week or at least three times a month. Like I've put in the work. I put in the work to get better, but I think I've exponentially gotten better since I really like got into revolvers. It does make you better at all every single other platform manipulating a trigger. I think it probably carries almost over to rifle. I don't do long range rifle like you do, but like if you can operate a 12 pound, now my trigger came at like probably 9 pounds, and I swear to God, I feel like I'm down to 7.5 on the, and it's still setting off European primers,
Hmm.
which I don't know how they did it. I think it's the way the Tor 66s are, and it doesn't really stack at the end of the trigger pull like most revolvers. Kind of they increases the weight quite a bit before it breaks. This
Uh-huh.
really doesn't, but it's still stageable. So I really like it. I think people will think it's pretty. I don't know what you have closest to it. Probably like your Model 19 carry comp.
Hmm.
Do you have a 3-inch 686 or only 4-inch?
I only have a 4-inch 686, but I've also got that 4-inch 686 plus mountain gun that I got recently, and that has a nice trigger on it as well. I think my 4-inch 686 has the best factory trigger that I've ever felt on a Smith and Wesson revolver. That one, it feels like a tuned double action trigger on that
But that's
particular
probably
revolver.
like a 12-year-old gun or so. 12 is a pretty older one.
It's mid '90s manufacture.
Yeah. So it's a bit different, a bit different nowadays. I think. I mean, unless you hit the lottery. Um, Hopefully your little 32 J frame is doing good.
That one works well, and truthfully, the carry comp has a nice trigger on it as well. It took a little time to wear in, but that one also is doing quite well at this point.
Yeah. What I like about this, for whatever reason, and to me, I can almost justify because if I can control it and make good hits with 357, I do think there's a different terminal ballistics than just shooting not some great 38 rounds nowadays. But if I can make the hits, that seventh shot makes me feel a lot better because
Uh-huh.
because I did have that situation with I was carrying a 7 shot, my GP 100, coming back from the range with the 5 carjackers. Had I gotten into it, well, at least I can engage 3 of them with two, 2, and 2. Hopefully, the rest are running, and I got one left to kind of carry my butt to retreat. Now I carry
Mhm.
a. I got my 856 ultralight as a backup, makes me feel a lot better about doing so. And I think I'm going to carry it some days this winter. But I like the 7 shot, and it's still lightweight, whereas your carry comp's probably, I think, 35, 36 ounces. This is 32 and a half and 7 shots. I mean, it's really made for someone that's actually gonna like looking for the best defensive carry revolver they can get. And it's kind of expensive. It's a special model, but to get something like, I don't even think you can really get something like that nowadays for under 1K, and it is kind of a tuned trigger as much as it is. So it's cool. I mean, you carry your 19 sometimes, don't you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't make me feel. I'm like, yeah, I've had instances where like I've had so many where I really worry about capacity to an extent. I usually say you want at least 9 rounds in gun, typically. And nowadays, in the last few years, it's gotten a lot easier to do without being ridiculously heavy. But if I got 7 magnums from a 3-inch barrel, and I train enough to make my hits, and then I got one to cover my butt and retreat while I'm drawing my backup gun, getting a cover, that kind of thing. And then they probably all ran away by then, and maybe one's down, and I can hold them there until police get there, kind of thing is
Mhm.
how I'm looking at it. So makes you a better shooter. I do have a lot of revolver content from um, basically from this Friday to about January 10th or so. I've got a lot of cool revolver content. So if there are wheel gun fans out there, like I have some good auto stuff and classic stuff coming, especially after the new year. But I do have a lot of revolver content coming, and then we get some diehard stuff towards Christmas time.
Dan, we got about 5 minutes left in the show here, and I just want to open this up to anyone that might have a question out there that they want to throw out for Dan or for me. I know I've seen quite a few comments going up the screen over here, and thank you to everyone who has been watching and participating. I know there's a lot of comments going on between all of you. I've got one here. This is from Marv Turner. I knew you were here, Marv. Still enjoying your Model 19 carry comp? Yes, I am. I carry that thing semi routinely, especially if I'm going to be out. And I talked about this when I was doing my video a couple of weeks ago, where I was talking about firearms that I carry while walking the dog. That's one of them, which just works very, very well for that application. So I do still have it. I do still like it. When I first got it, if you saw the videos that I produced back then, we had kind of a rocky start, but after it went back to Smith and Wesson and came back to me, it's been working very, very well.
And that's something about a 3-inch 357. It gives you the versatility for animal defense, woods defense, rounds, or even rounds like these PP 158s that go really deep, contested them. So if you're looking for something that will work good on two-legged, it will over penetrate in the real world, but work good on two-legged, but work good on four-legged too. And if a dog attacks or whatever, like that's something that a wheel gun can do, which I like. Oh, and before I forget, while you're looking up for another question, Howard, I do want to plug BH Solutions again. So you've done a lot with them. I did talk to Mark about the P320 stuff, and if you got a 320 sitting there, send it off to Mark. But he is and the high power medic working on some stuff for me. So in the new year, after we get some revolver stuff, we might see some high power stuff. Hopefully, we might see high power of his 1911 stuff. We might get my high power back from Mark, which I'll definitely do a video on from BH Solutions after seeing the videos of yours that you've done, and I rewatched them before I contacted him. And maybe a super rare high power. We might see that next year from me as well.
I am going to have a kind of a different sort of a BH Spring Solutions video coming probably next week. That's going to be coming up. And in fact, I was working on that today. I got it about halfway done. If I can get the rest of it done, which is going to require me trudging through the snow out on the range probably tomorrow. But if I can get that all finished and edited and everything, that's probably going to be my next Wednesday's video. So we'll get a little bit of BH Spring Solutions content coming up for that period.
Yeah, they seem like good people and good products, and they can make you a decent gun into a great gun. I'm hoping so. I think I'm going to be happy when I get them back. And I got a regular high power and then a real special rare one. And not even joking about that. In fact, their engineer keeps it as his bedside defense pistol there in Belgium if someone breaks in.
Got a question here coming in from Nilla Coke. Thoughts on 38 Super now that ammo exceeding plus P plus 9mm are available, 10+1 capacity, single stack 1911. I am a fan of the 38 Super. If it's loaded properly, and a lot of you know that I have an affiliation with Hot Munitions in Hayesville, Ohio. They load it. It's coming in just slightly below 357 SIG.
I think you had a 1560 or 1518, something like that. The hop, it was like,
yeah, it's coming in just like I said, just shy of 357 SIG. I really like 38 Super. Plus, it's a great historical cartridge. If you delve into it and see that it was originally the brainchild of John Browning, it was incorporated by Colt into what it was basically a hot load for the 38 ACP starting in the late 1920s, when it was determined that the 1911 platform could deal with that particular level of pressure. And it's just a really great old cartridge. If you want to do sort of long range work, it gets into sort of mid range 357 Magnum ballistics. So I'm a huge fan of the 38 Super. How about you, Dan? What do you think of it?
I don't even know if I've shot more than 1 or 2 rounds in my life. I have a box just in case for barter somewhere, but I've never owned a 38 Super. And it's too bad. I was hoping maybe getting one of those T-Sus that came with 2 barrels, and the price on those is like literally doubled, which is too bad. I wish I would have been able to get one. Who did it? Was a 1911 Syndicate, or maybe the guy who goes on his channel did a good 38 Super video with Ken Hackathorn. I
Okay.
think that's who it was. There was a good video on the Super 38, and to be pedantic, but you know, if I can only shoot at 1,200 feet per second, what a lot of the ammo is, that's one thing. But when I saw you shooting that hop ammo, I'm like, I can get hollow points at over 1,500 feet per second from a normal sized barrel. Like, ooh, that is pretty dang nice. I would like to have one. And yeah, I see nothing wrong with 11 rounds of 38 Super in a 1911 because you could put them where they need to go, and they're going to be. That's a lot more effective than typical 9mm. Will
Yeah,
be
I
terminal ballistics wise.
like I said, I am a huge fan of the 38 Super. We've got another question coming up here from Revolver Man 38. Thoughts on the 1791 gun belts and holsters? I don't think I have any experience with those. Do you?
I also have no experience with them, which is weird because they're one of the companies that a lot of YouTubers can get with and market, and yet it has never happened. It has never happened for me. I think it just depends on the particular model and how they fit. Some look really good, and some look a little. I don't know. I think it just depends on which model, but I'd have no experience.
No, that
1791, send us both some holsters. I need a new one. I think an L frame holster for my new 66 Combat is what I need. I got Azula sending me one. I haven't gotten it yet. Since Greg Line Quest Fitness has been so good with Azula, but 1791 I haven't. I could certainly use one. So who knows?
And we got one here from Limp Biscuiteer. Do you guys think we'll ever see a 9mm major become a self-defense round, or will it always be a competition round? I don't think we can ever say never or ever when it comes to anything having to do with firearms, because everything is so cyclical and trendy and one thing and another. I think a lot of that's going to depend on what kind of platform that is developed, how it is marketed. You know, when we've looked before with the things like the 356 TSW and the 9x23 and some of these, they've been marketed as competition oriented cartridges rather than defensive oriented cartridges. If we see a 9mm major cartridge that is defensive oriented and it's marketed that way, and it comes out in commensurate to a firearm that's going to be a popular carry size, then who knows? It's hard to tell what we might see in the future.
Yeah, I would say you got to look up the actual specs on it. Is it thicker brass to handle more pressure? But then there's a problem. Is it higher than plus 9mm plus P? So it could hurt all the pistols that are not rated for 9mm major. I think that's the biggest setback it would have. I think the closest to happening was Terran Tactical was going to push it and come out with something, and then he saw in John Wick 3 to defeat body armor instead of, I don't know, grabbing the full auto machine guns and rifle calibers that were on the wall, or even P90 that was on the wall. But he was going to, I believe, he was going to make a push to come out with his branded 9mm major, and then I think he had the huge fire with 100,000 rounds. His barn blew up or something like that. So if you know, comment down below and let us know what the story is with that and the PSI and stuff like that. I'm kind of curious about that.
I got a comment here from Jeeps Cafe that I'm going to respond to quickly. He sent me a message earlier saying that he had seen me on a TV show or in a movie somewhere. And he says now that he has determined that it was Terra Nova. And it's funny that you say that, because I remember my daughter really enjoyed that particular program. And I remember watching it. So I know exactly the actor you're talking about. I think he's probably much better looking than I am. And he's certainly much better in front of a camera than I am. But thanks a lot, Jeeps Cafe, for the comparison to that particular character and that actor.
Yeah, your video this morning, you've never looked more like whoever that is. It that cartoon character? What is that character you
Oh,
look like?
the from Small Soldiers, that guy.
Oh my god, because you had the green on and it looks like you recently done your hair. I watched it on the way to the range. I was at a stoplight. I'm like, oh my god, dude, that's funny. I mean, it was, yeah, it's like uh, reality is imitating art. Yes.
I got to go tomorrow and get a haircut because I'm embarrassed with the way my hair is looking right now, which again is the reason I'm wearing a hat tonight.
Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I really hope people will check out this video Friday because I literally spent days editing and adding in footage and adding in the range footage and footage of reloads and all kinds of stuff. So hopefully it's a fun one. And I do have a lot of fun stuff coming up, a lot of revolver content next year, doing my major pistol study, comparing calibers to calibers, red dot versus iron sight, see if any of the BS people have been writing about for 30 years, if any of that matters, doing my realistic 25 round CCW test. So like all from revolvers, from 380 up to 45, basically to 357 Magnum, trying it all out. And that's kind of a lot of what's coming next year, and on high powers, and a lot of other kind of really unique stuff. Some stuff from the 90s, DASA stuff you maybe never seen before, and things like that. I'm getting into like I like cool classic stuff now. I'm getting footy, getting older. I still play with the red dotted striker stuff like this last weekend, but like that fun, yeah.
All right, Dan. Well, it's been great having you on the show. Thank you so much for appearing as a guest and going back through your history and talking about how you got to where you are now and a lot of the things you're working on presently. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you for being my friend and for agreeing to appear this evening. If you don't mind, I'm going to move you out of the room quickly and wrap up the show, and I will get back to you momentarily.
Okay.
So that was Dan the Wolfman, everyone. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, a great friend of the channel, fantastic and interesting individual. If you've not seen his channel, by all means, check it out. Thank you to everyone who has been here this evening and watching the show and commenting. And I know that I didn't get to a lot of your comments, but I've kind of tried to keep an eye on them as they've been running up the screen over here on the side. I know a lot of you have been talking to each other, which is fantastic. Thank you for being part of the community surrounding my channel. To everyone who watches the videos, comments on the videos, joins in on the live chat during the premieres, who joins in to the chat during the live streams. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being part of the best viewers on the internet. And I tell people that all the time, that I have the best viewers on the internet, bar none. To my channel members who make that monthly contribution, a special thank you to all of you. I've mentioned this many, many times that particularly when YouTube starts demonetizing everything, that contribution you make every month is just amazingly helpful. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. One last time, if you want to vote for me for the best reviewer, best gun reviewer in the Gundies, go by thegundies.com. I'll bring the banner back up here. You can go by thegundies.com, go to the best gun reviewer. You'll find me down near the bottom of that list. Again, I'm not sure if that means anything or not, what my position is on the page, but you can vote for me. You can vote for me once every 24 hours. So and when I look at the various people that are nominated on there, I don't know that I have any realistic expectation of actually winning, but it is an honor just to be nominated. And if any of you do want to vote for me, just go to that website and you can do so. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great evening. We'll try to do this at least one more time before Christmas. I have got a video coming up. There's going to be a out of sequence video coming up later this week. There's going to be the regular Saturday video. I should have my regular videos next week, and we'll start looking at getting close to the final video of the year, which is going to be my favorite firearm of 2025. So until then, everyone, have a great, great evening, a wonderful rest of the week. See you next time. And until then, good shooting and bye-bye for now.